And we are, let's see. Let's see. Weird. Okay, hold on. My computer is deciding not to. My computer is spazzing out while we're streaming. We are not recording yet. I don't know what the I don't know
I,
what's going on. My OBS, my Mac has been I updated it last week and something is so messed up with it. I have no idea. I have no idea what's going on. So, but whatever. It's recording on Zoom. We're streaming, so that's good. On Sunday, October 8th, 2023, with Mr. Jeff Davis, who's been on here a couple times before. He stole my heart when we first met. We started talking about UFOs, and it's been off to the races ever since then. And you were just telling me that you've got a new project underway. So, with that, Mr. Jeff Davis, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Tommy?
I'm doing fantastic. So, what new project is it that you're working on?
Oh, it's not really a new one; it's an old one, but it's something I've been working on in stealth mode for maybe as much as 2017. It was born late in 2017 and has gone through a couple of changes, and now I'm about to come out of stealth mode with it. And it's a little bit embarrassing, There are a lot of crackpots out there in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I may just be one of them. I'm not sure. It's up to the world to decide that, and whatever listeners you have. But here we go. There are two events happening in the world that have generated a lot of attention. One of them is global warming, and the other one is the concept of the separation of much of the world from the dollar-dominated financial system. The war in Ukraine has accelerated the attempted divorce of the community of nations that don't like the idea of being captured by the dollar financial system, what I refer to as the neoliberal finance capitalism system. And so I've taken these two items, the global warming situation that everybody is kind of has a certain degree of focus and energy devoted to, and the finance capitalism liberation movement, and created a project built around these two things melded together. One, remediate global warming. We really know how to do it. The technologies for remediating global warming are established and mostly mature, although they continue to improve incrementally. And they are solar power, wind power, and nuclear power. The solar panel business is increasing by 30% a year, and it's very mature. The outputs and the outputs of the panels are up around 25%, and they last for 25 years, very durable, and the price per watt retail is down about 23, 4, 5 cents, wholesale 19 cents. 19 cents is the cost of producing a solar panel with that kind of output now. It's all robotic. We know about the wind thing, wind turbines, and they're already established as a mature industry. I'd like to see a little bit of improvement there to eliminate the killing of birds and wildlife, but it's a mature industry with the prices down, actually below the cost of coal-fired electrical generation. And nuclear is an old industry, but it's about to undergo a transformation from the old solid fuel bundle fourth generation boiling water reactors and pressurized water reactors to molten salt reactors. the next iteration of nuclear power being molten salt reactors, which I suspect will be able to be generated much like Henry Kaiser generated the Victory ships during World War II. I mean, cranking them out in industrial capacity, assembly line, bang, 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 bang. You know, that kind of production rate will help to scale up the number of nuclear power plants, and in that sense, speed up the transition, because you'll have volume, of course. Now, the thing about the molten salt reactors that makes them distinctly different and qualifies them for being the next generation is that safety in nuclear power generation is the single most important aspect. Nobody wants a Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island. And all of the old generation nuclear reactors are just time bombs waiting for someone to prove that the term foolproof is not really, it has no validity when it comes to human beings. Fools are extremely inventive in countering out the concept of foolproof, multiple redundancy, and God knows what all. Now, the thing about the molten salt reactors is that they are walk-away safe. You can, the guy in the reactor control room can keel over from a heart attack. Nobody can discover it. The reactor overheats, and because of the design, is a passive safety design. All of the nuclear material just drains out into a cooling pool, and it's all over. Walk away safe. No need to be there all the time, watching over it to make sure it doesn't turn into a nuclear bomb. Okay, these are the 3 methods to remediate global warming. Now, the problem is one of scale. Currently, the world consumes about 150,000 terawatt hours of energy each year. That's a lot of energy. It's the size of the transformation, the size of the transition that makes it a hard sell. Now, the reason you can't, at present, the rate of increase in solar panel and other green energy sources to replace the hydrocarbon sources, coal, oil, natural gas, is maybe 5% a year. 5% of that 150,000 terawatt hours, which means it would take about 200 years at the current rate to replace it all. Now, things are increasing. The natural situation when you have a demand to deal with a problem that's coming at you head on is to get to work on it. And if you check out I'll list it, I'll put it in the chat a little bit later. It's a magazine that deals with the PV industry, photovoltaic, solar panels, basically. And I'm reading it all the time and monitoring where all the solar panel projects are being in place. And I can see that, you know, year by year, they're working at it steadily, and it's growing about 30% a year. It's not enough if you want to do it within 20 to 30 years. But, okay. The problem is that the scale of the acceleration, the scale of the build out of the supply chains that lie upstream from all of these technologies, in order to meet this to reach the 150,000 terawatt hour replacement, which, by the way, increases by about 1% a year, somewhere between 1 and 2% a year. So if you have a project that goes for 20 to 30 years, you have to realize that it's going to be substantially more than 150,000 terawatt hours as you move forward. So you're going to have a little bit more than that. But that's the place we start, 150,000 terawatt hours. In order to get there, because it's not a matter of just building, accelerate the construction of more solar panel factories, because a solar panel factory is the end of the supply chain. All of the stuff that a solar panel factory uses to create its solar panels is generated upstream in the supply chain. So if you were to build solar panel factories hand over fist very rapidly, you would have a choke point because you wouldn't have the supply chains to meet the need. So you have to expand not only, you have to expand every supply chain element for the expansion of solar panel production. The problem with this is that because of the scale of the amount of energy needed, the amount of increase in solar panel production is so large that there isn't money to finance it within the old neoliberal finance system. You'd have to basically take maybe 50% of all the available capital on the planet that's ready to be deployed, and it goes all different places. That's not possible. There's just not enough money. So what do you have to do to solve the problem that everybody says is impossible because it's too big and you can't do it fast enough because there is no way to finance it? Well, the way is to recognize that the old neoliberal financial system is where the choke point lies. And then you examine that system. You examine where money comes from, who has controlled it, how it works, and you design an alternative system, if possible. You identify where the problem might lie in designing a new monetary system so that you can have adequate finance capital for the scale of the project. Okay, now I go back. I started studying the nature of money back when I got into crypto in 2017. And the nature of money is something really interesting, and I want to recommend that people check out Michael Hudson. And I'm going to put into the chat, the sources for this. One of them is for a fast update on the two elements of this. One is the changing economic system in the world. That's the result of the rise of BRICS and the motivation of people to get away from the American dollar system. And another is, have I said it? There it is. Another is the nature of money itself. Now, I've been watching a bunch of people online describe the nature of money. Elon Musk, I've got a short video of Elon Musk saying something that really encapsulates. He says, what is money? It's an entry in a database. That's it. He summarizes it. Because if you think about it, all of the wealth in the world is identified and assigned to people who own the assets that is the basis of that wealth by a variety of financial services industries. Your bank has your record of what you have in terms of money. Your stockbroker has a record of what you have in terms of stocks, bonds, things of that sort. Your home and your car, the ownership of it associated with the title you hold to these assets is recorded somewhere. All of these are entries in a database, and money is no different. Money in general. Now, here's where the situation gets kind of interesting, because it's involved with people's understanding of money, and I will not bury the lead. I will simply say it straight out. The other part of the project to remediate global warming is the creation of an alternative monetary system to the current neoliberal monetary system. The current neoliberal monetary system is the only game in town at the moment, which means if you or any entrepreneur wants to do a project, and they need funding, the only place they can go is the current neoliberal system. Now, the dollar-dominated system has various little elements like the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the SWIFT system, the Bank of International Settlements, and a whole bunch of money police organizations, Department of Justice, the Securities and Exchange Commission, CFTB, Office of Financial Assets Control, whole bunches of money police to maintain control, to maintain the U.S. domination of money flows worldwide. And the Ukraine war has emphasized, brought into clear view how this system is dominated by the United States, and how if you get on the wrong side of Uncle Sam and the money people in the United States, they can shut you out of the SWIFT system, seize all of your assets, put you in jail if they need to or want to, or drone strike you, you know?
No, it's one of the, I was going to say, one of the police organizations you didn't mention. You said Department of Justice and SEC. I was going to say, and DOD. You know, that's the enforcement arm.
Let's leave out the drone strike part.
I think that's the most pertinent part. I think most people don't care about all the other options. It's until the reason why it's enforced isn't because of sanctions. It's because if push comes to shove, we will invade your country with tanks and B-52s and special forces and destroy your country. We've done it time and time again. I think it's the most important aspect. I think everything else is a slap on the wrist. The final one is the nail in the coffin.
And there are forces rising in the world, or that have already risen, that are immune from that because they're big enough that they can't be taken on. The Russia, and formerly the Soviet Union, and China both have the same nuclear deterrent and military capacity to make sure that the military aspect of enforcement is not available. But the financial aspect most clearly is, as we've seen with the absorption of Russia's $300 billion foreign reserves. So the people around the world see this, they understand they're trapped, and they're trying to get out of it. And BRICS is basically the centerpiece of that effort. The BRICS community: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now we have Argentina, Egypt, Iran, United Arab Emirates. Have I missed somebody? The new 5 more? Argentina, Iran, United Arab Emirates, and Egypt. Yeah, I missed one. Well, whatever. Okay, so this community of nations with a whole bunch of other people putting in their application form to join. Okay. And Brazil, Lula is at Brazil and has asked for a new global currency. India doesn't want it. China is hesitant. The sovereign countries wonder where or who would be the new master of that currency. China being the big boy in terms of economics. Nobody wants to trade one tyrant, the United States, for another tyrant, China. Lots of discussions around how to create an alternative currency to provide the escape hatch, the escape module from the old neoliberal system. Well, we already have alternative currencies to the sovereign currencies, the old legacy sovereign currencies. and in particular, the dollar-dominated system. Bitcoin is the proof of principle of the ability to create an alternative currency. Now, Bitcoin was the very first version of that. And I generally like to show a picture of Henry Ford's very, very first horseless carriage, which had a tiller,
Yeah.
to make the point that the very first iteration of a new technology is primitive, but we know from experience that as those technologies are developed, they get better and better. Following Bitcoin, which has that problem with the energy consumption, it's okay. That was a problem that needed to be solved. And the Ethereum network, which has as its native coin the Ether, solved the energy problem by going from proof of work, which is where the energy problem comes from, to something called proof of stake that reduced the energy consumption by 99%. I knew it was going to happen somewhere. I wasn't sure, but Ethereum was the one that made that happen. We have a dozen or more blockchain networks now working that all have their own special use function. Okay, what I propose and have already implemented in the first generation is the creation of an alternative currency that is not a sovereign currency. It's not a digital bank currency, central bank digital currency, which people are a little bit scared of, because if you turn the control of the money you use over to your central bank, they will spy on you and have complete control of you. The digital currency that I'm creating is not related to the central bank, so they don't get to spy on you or control you using the currency that I'm creating. Now, here's the thing. When I first started this and first conjured up the idea of creating an alternative currency, it had one specific use. That was to fund the development of the green energy system, fund the buildup of the solar panel supply chain, because I could create as much currency as I wanted. It's a few keystrokes, and you've created a digital currency. There are 1.8 million crypto tokens now listed on CoinMarketCap's basically list of all the cryptos. I remember when I started this project, there were 600 alternative crypto tokens. And now there are 1.8 million, which means that everybody out there in the universe who has one of these for $2 can create an alternative financial instrument. The financial instrument I'm creating is an alternative currency for the use to generate and fund the expansion of the supply chains for green energy. It's called the Green Freedom Project, and I'm doing it out of my business organization that I set up here in Mexico called Via Adelante. It's also in the chat. I have been working behind the scenes without a website and without any kind of media presence up until now. And what I've been trying to do was to get in contact with the BRICS people. I've contacted the embassies of El Salvador and Brazil and China in Mexico, and attempted to contact the Mexican economics minister for AMLO in order to get them to have a meeting so that I could lay out what it is I'm working on. because basically, if you're expanding the essence of expanding the supply chains upstream at the scale necessary is a gigantic project, and it amounts to a huge employment opportunity, an employment project in Mexico and in Egypt. These are the two headquarters for this activity. Both of them have populations of approximately 100 million, reasonably well educated, very capable, and their labor markets are underutilized because they don't have the same level of educational training, and they don't have the same level of access to finance, the necessary access to finance. That's why Mexico is a country of modest living standards and modest industrial capacity. AMLO, the recently elected leader of Mexico, in his inaugural address, said he wanted a way, an alternative to the neoliberal system, which had held Mexico in captivity, in impoverishment for 100 years. When I heard that, I realized that he was the perfect guy for me to present this program to and seek Mexican sponsorship for it. But I haven't been able to get in contact with the Mexican leadership people. Now, that's on me. I'm an old retired guy. I like to sleep late. I'm lazy, and I'm a little bit, I don't want to spend money if I don't have to. When I got my crypto bonanza, I went into this in a slightly different way, and I dumped $750,000 and got absolutely nothing out of it. Is really the fool and his money are quickly separated, and I had to learn that you don't spend money unwisely, or you'll get nothing. And there's a lot of people out there will take your money from you, and they'll be nice folks. They'll work for you, but sometimes they just can't execute, but they still want to be paid. And so I learned that lesson. Then I came here to Mexico. I was already in Mexico, and I started this project on my own and decided that, okay, I'm not going to be paying highly paid professionals, $150 an hour type people that can't deliver. That I was going to do as much of it myself as I could on as small a budget as I could. And I mentioned my previous experience because in that moment of my life, I paid $50,000 for a Washington lobbyist to help get myself and my business associates into meetings in Washington with the various members of the Financial Services Subcommittee, the people who had oversight of the SEC, to try to get them to help us to move forward. And we got a meeting with those Congress people. They're all very, very friendly. Very, very friendly people. You go into their office and they smile, and I'm sure they're lovely people, because they need to be friendly in order to get their votes. But then I met with the Senate Banking Committee, a group of folks at the Senate Banking Committee, and I realized that the banking people, as represented by the Banking Committee, were about to go to war with crypto. And you may have noticed that was 2017. That in the years between then and now, the Securities and Exchange Commission has done two things to prevent crypto from being from rising. One is business people who want to engage in a crypto-funded project, or I should say a crypto-enabled project, need to have solid rules to follow so that they can be certain that they're safe. They don't want to put their money and their time into developing something with the risk of enforcement, the money police coming after them at any moment. And the Securities and Exchange Commission managed to suppress crypto for 6 years by the simple technique of refusing to issue the rules by which people could use crypto safely and be authorized and be free of any enforcement risk. That really put a lid on it. In fact, when the Securities and Exchange Commission announced that they were getting involved in cryptos, almost to the day that I entered in around August the 1st of 2017, as soon as that happened, everybody who was already in cryptos, at that point, the market cap of the crypto activity was just about reached $1 trillion. And at that point, you're talking some serious money. And now the regulators want to make sure that everybody is kept safe, safe. Like they're big guys in the money business, want to be safe from the competition. Unless of course, they're in on it. So that put a damper on it. And you may have heard of recent SEC activities, SEC enforcement actions against a variety of crypto companies and projects. All of which, by the way, the SEC has lost because that war, which went on for about 6 years as the crypto environment expanded, that I knew the war was going to be lost, but I couldn't fight it. But the crypto ecosystem expanded and expanded and expanded, and everybody, the industrial people, the big banks, and the other institutions saw that it wasn't going away, and they wanted in on it. And so the more they were interested in it, the more difficult it became for the Securities and Exchange Commission to keep it down. And there were a number of lawsuits filed. Just recently, the authorization for exchange traded funds for crypto assets has been authorized. After you have to submit an application to the Securities and Exchange Commission to open an exchange traded fund, and those applications had been stalled and suppressed and not approved. And so just recently, those approvals have come through. You may have heard that Gensler, at the head of the SEC, tried to identify every last crypto as a security in an effort to force them to either register as securities or face enforcement. But that was shut down as well. Okay, so fast forward, we're now ready for this. So I seek to create this new currency. I've actually generated the first version of it on the Binance Smart Chain. It's called Green Freedom, after the Green Freedom Project, and the currency itself I will be calling Green. When I began to do this, I thought this was all there was to it. That I would generate the crypto would fund the development of the supply chains and create the effort to build green energy resources. And I saw that the motivation among the world population, the need to have that, it was self-evident that people were getting concerned about, the impending doom of humanity as the world overheated. Now, I'm not one of the hysterical climate crazies. And it's become politicized now, so that on the right, everybody says, oh, the climate thing is a hoax. The electric cars are bad, because of course they want to protect the oil and gas industry. And the folks on the left, it's become a political thing, and I'm not involved. I wish that I could avoid involvement in that, although I'm certain that once the publicity, I publicized the effort, the folks on one side will associate me with the climate crazies on the left, folks on the right. And the climate crazies on the left will try to imagine that I am their ally, which I am not. I have no sympathy for their madness. The Green New Deal is, in my view, is a political project. Sponsored by the Democratic Party. And I believe that any project sponsored by the Democratic Party will go nowhere, for obvious reasons. They talk about any number of things that they're all enthusiastic about in order to get people to vote for them, but they really haven't either the ability or the determination or the sincere desire to make it happen. They just want you to think. Anyway, I don't want to go political on you or anybody. I want to stay away from that and stick with the technical aspects of it. So let's go back for a moment to the creation of a currency, a global currency mounted on the internet outside of the jurisdictional control of any specific country. If I generate the money and I invite anyone and everyone across the planet to participate, because it's a giant works project, individual countries can opt out. And I suspect that the United States will do that, because obviously this challenges the dollar domination system. Now, the BRICS people are already challenging the dollar dominated system. So in a sense, I have a big ally, even if they're not happy with what I'm doing, not precisely happy with me. The main conflict that the dollar dominated system faces, the main opposition, comes from BRICS, not from little old me. Excuse me. Okay. Now, as I began to do this, I realized that this was not merely the creation of an alternative currency. It's a central piece of this. But really, it's an alternative monetary system, because it involves a currency and it involves what's referred to as a capital market. I generate 100 trillion green, each with a value of approximately $5. Now, this is a $500 trillion pile of money available to be used to build up the supply chains for solar, nuclear, wind, and another aspect of this is what I refer to as carbon capture. Because the real goal of green energy is to stop the emission of carbon dioxide, to keep the level of carbon dioxide down to a safe level, to diminish the rate at which it's increasing. Well, one of the ways you can do that, that's not about generating clean energy, is by sucking the carbon dioxide out of the environment, out of the atmosphere. And that can be done by, planting trees. And there are places on the earth which are now relatively barren, where you can create biological activity, green activity, plant growth, or in the case of the South Pacific Gyre, a vast area in the South Pacific that is like a desert because it doesn't have dissolved nutrients vital for life, iron. That vast area can be fertilized with soluble iron and create a biological explosion of plankton, and which will, at the same time, create an entire food source. The plankton is food for small creatures, and the small creatures are food for larger creatures. And at the end of that line, you have tuna and shrimp, lots and lots. But at the same time, you're pulling that carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. That's what plants do. That's a specialty item off to the side. I mention it because I've noticed, and I would like other people to notice, that 70% of the surface of the earth is covered in water, which doesn't make it useless. It just means that traditionally we get on boats and we cross it. Occasionally we get on boats and go out and fish in it. But it's there to be used. The dirt is there. It's just a couple of miles down underneath the water. And this is seasteading. It's a concept of settling the ocean with floating communities, and there's a lot of potential value there. One of which is fertilizing the barren areas of the ocean and generating an explosion of biological activity, plankton. One small element in that story is the same technique was used off of the coast of British Columbia, and it created an explosion of salmon population, unprecedented in the history of salmon fisheries. Iron sulfate dissolves in water, needs to be a soluble form of iron. They went out and dumped a bunch of iron sulfate out there, and it created this explosion of biology that the salmon feed on. And so that's history, proof of principle, but it's already been done in a variety of places. So anyway, back to the story. We have this strong desire across the planet for a method to save humanity from the dire consequences of global warming. Lots of people are looking for a solution to that. There's the motivation. On the other side, we have the recent creation of digital currencies with the emergence of our new digital era. I mean, I'm a little older. Guys like you, younger than me, were born into the digital era, and you don't know anything about what it was like, but you don't know what it was like before. In the era before digital technology, the telephone was stuck on the wall. And the television, if you had to change the channel, you had to get up out of your seat and go turn the dial. And you had 3, maybe 4 channels: ABC, CBS, NBC, and PBS. Then digital technology came along, satellites came along, cable TV came along. Steve Jobs did his thing here with this first Apple phone, 2006, something like that, maybe earlier, not sure. And now we walk around with the supercomputer in our hand, access to everybody on the planet and all the planet's knowledge. The world is a different place. So the old system of world finance, dollar dominated, I have a mental image of the hen house. Fox in the hen house. with a big wall around it. This is the financial system owned by the financial oligarchs, the bankers, the laws that regulate this system are put out by governments. In the case of the dollar-denominated system, obviously the United States government. The legislators get their campaign finance money from the oligarchs. They make the laws that regulate the banking system on behalf of the oligarchs, so that the oligarchs have us all trapped. And that wall, that regulatory wall, prevented anyone else from invading the hen house. But the invention of Bitcoin, the invention of the digital universe and the cryptocurrencies and the distributed network that now connects us all globally, blew a hole in that wall and liberated everyone who now would like to participate in the financial system as an entrepreneur from the limitations, the monopoly of funding. Now, here's where things get really interesting. I generated $500 trillion worth of capital to be deployed to fund the expansion of the supply chains. My wife, who has listened to my craziness, she said to me, "Who's going to use your monopoly money? You're inventing money. You can't do that." And yet, we have seen with the COVID thing and the abandonment of the gold standard in 1971, we have seen that fiat currencies are just basically generated out of nothing. And so as I began to study money, I discovered the way it really is versus the way most people think of it. Most people think of money. I want money. I want a lot of money. If I have a lot of money, I'm rich. Money is wealth. That's all they know. And you go to the store and you take your wallet out or your credit card and you buy stuff. You go to work, you get paid. The automatic deposit to your bank account so that you can go to the store with this credit card. And that's the money system to you. Money is wealth. But money is not wealth. Money is a financial instrument that lubricates, enables economic activity. If you have a project, you need money. What do you need it for? Because if you have a project, you need to buy land, hire people, build production facilities, train service providers. You need all the little bits and pieces of any kind of financial activity in order to operate. So you need to get it from somewhere. And when the system was monopolized and you could only get it from one place, what did you do? You got it from them and you had to pay them. If you had investors and you started a company and you went for a Series A funding round, you would sell a certain proportion of your company to the investors. Now you have money and you begin to build your company. You build your company, you start operating, but you're not in the black yet. So you go to a Series B investment round, get more money, sell more of your company, expand the company's ability to provide the product or service. And at some point, you reach a place where if your company is big enough and the profits and the established, revenue generation is clear, then you can go to the big investment bankers and you can get them to make your company available on a stock market. You can now get the whole big public involved in investing in your company. Prior to that, you could only get people who are called qualified investors. And these people are people who, by definition, according to the regulations, the laws made by people working for the bankers and the financial services industry who had more than $2 million worth of net worth. That made them qualified investors. The wealthy people could get in on it, but mom and pop couldn't. The theory of this is that if you go out, if you didn't have these regulations that restricted your funding to qualified investors, people were smart. Excuse me. Then the widows and orphans would be taken advantage of. That shysters and bad actors would be going around and saying, I have a gold mine and I need equipment to mine the gold. And you can invest in it and I'll give you half of my gold mine. And they would take the widows and orphans' poor money and go off to Aruba and live on a yacht and have $50 a night hookers or $500 a night hookers. I don't know, depending on how many widows and orphans they abused. Okay. So they built this this protective wall around that entrepreneurial activity. And that restrained everybody. But in the end, when they build their company, who gets the profits, the revenue, the value from the company? The founders, who retain a certain proportion of the stock, the company, all the investors who went through the first rounds, and usually they have, and then there are the public investors when the big commercial bank, Goldman Sachs is typical, does all of the legal filings and preparation for the sale, the initial public offering of stock, which will then be mounted on the stock market, and which in general is considered the portal, the doorway, the path to great expansion of the company and substantial profits by the founders and the investors, and perhaps the retail stock purchasers. What about the workers generally get a wage, and that's it. And the nature of capitalism being what it is, companies seek to pay their workers the absolute minimum that they can get away with and still get the workers, which is why, of course, with the emergence of containerized transoceanic commerce that made the transport of goods in containers across oceans extremely cost effective, the folks who had previously had industrial capacity in the United States took their factories and moved them over to China because the Chinese were paying less. Their wage rates were lower. And if you can reduce the wage component, the labor component in your product or service, then you get more profit. So boom, everybody goes over to China. And we know how that worked out. Now the folks who used to work at the local factory have food stamps and fentanyl to keep them from being too rowdy. Okay. So you have this monopoly. The only place you can get your money is from inside the walls that protect the hen house, the source of capital, the capital market. And I issue a new currency in substantial quantities to create a fund to be used to fund to build the supply chains to help with the global warming remediation. Highly motivated. Now, you have fiat currency, you have currency backed by gold or precious metals. What else do you have? Fiat currency is backed by nothing but the full faith and credit of the United States government. Okay, well, the U.S. is pretty creditworthy, although $33 trillion in debt now, and the loss of all of its industrial capacity and the domination of its economic system by finance capital, lending and renting and mortgages and real estate, and not really production, but more like the movement of money and the charging of interest rates. Rental for money is the way. Now that's being challenged. So although the dollar is, according to Michael Hudson, still going to be used for a while, the dollar's on shaky ground. We see a little bit of inflation happening already, or maybe a lot, depending on who you are and where you are and how much money you have to fund your life. Okay, then there's money backed by hard currency, some solid asset. The BRICS people were talking about a currency backed by a basket of currencies, was one way they phrased it, or by a basket of commodities, things that had real value. And of course, there's currency backed by gold. And we have heard that the central banks across the planet are buying gold hand over fist in anticipation of getting out from under the American dollar-dominated system. Then they will have gold as their balance of payments, their reserve. And gold is recognized to have value. Gold, let me say that again. Gold is recognized to have value, which is why they are buying it hand over fist, so that their banks can have stable currency backed by gold. Now, it's a subject for another discussion, but gold has no industrial use, no significant industrial use. It does have an established use as a store of value. For thousands of years, gold has been considered to be of value, and because of that, people believe in its value, and that belief creates the utility of gold as a place where you can store your wealth safely. Now, if that belief should ever fade, and the value of gold should be based on whatever its industrial use is, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be valuable for anything. And gold miners would no longer mine, because mining gold actually takes a bunch of money. That's the base level value of gold, how much it takes to extract it from the earth. But that belief is current and has been around for thousands of years. That's why currencies backed by gold are called hard currencies. They're backed by something which is recognized universally to be of solid value. Fiat currencies, no. Fiat currencies are just puffed. Few keystrokes, $1 trillion. Pretty much similar to what I've done. Created $500 trillion worth of currency, of capital. Now, here's the thing. Now, my capital is going to be used pretty much exclusively to build the green energy resource of the future. So if you want a currency that's a hard currency because it's backed by something of indisputable value, there is nothing on the planet which has more indisputable value, not based on belief, not based on the full faith and credit of the United States or British or French or Russian or Chinese governments, but based on something of indisputable value. The single most valuable, indisputably valuable commodity on the planet is energy. So remember, if I'm funding the building of the green energy resource of the future, that currency is backed by the energy that will be generated by that system. So let me give you just one small example.
And it's 5:10. I can go to like 5:30. I have another guest after. Just FYI. Keep going.
Okay, so let me see if I can kind of bring it all together. There's something called the fractional reserve banking system. Have you heard of it?
And by the way, if I'm rushing you, we can always do a part 2. You don't have to cram it all into the next 20 minutes. It's up to you. Go for
It's
it.
okay.
Yeah.
You do a part 2 and a part 3 and a part 4.
Yeah.
I understand. I'm taking advantage of you, bro, because I need to publicize this. I've been in stealth mode for a long time, and I'm working to generate my website and my media. I didn't care about those things because I thought that I could contact the Mexican government. I could show them the plan. I could get them to host me, and then I could begin to build it and go public in Mexico with their sponsorship. But I haven't been able to get in contact with them. So now I need a website that explains the project. I need media presence to publicize the project. And then, and hopefully, you know, the reason I couldn't get in contact with the Mexican leadership was because I'm not good at it. And I wasn't willing to fork out the money. There are people, you can hire them, people who specialize in access and contacting people important. I just wasn't good at it. So now I'll go public this way, and the word will get out and I'll be able to talk to them. Fractional reserve banking system. This is important because the monetary, I'm creating an entirely separate, independent, alternative monetary system to the neoliberal system. And this is kind of, it's a little complicated, but the hardest part of it is that everybody who's brought up in our current world, with the current notions of economies and the way the world works, is like a fish in the ocean. You can't ask a fish what it's like to be wet. You can't ask a fish what it's like to walk on solid ground, because the two universes, the universe of dry land where gravity pulls you down, and there's you know, you live on the flat, not in the three-dimensional world, and you know what wet is because it's what happens when you get caught out in the rain. Fish doesn't know what wet is, doesn't know what air is. Maybe flying fish do, and a couple of those mud skippers. But otherwise, so the difference between the financial system that I propose and the old system is so foreign that this is a major challenge for me to explain it. And that, for one thing, is why I put those two clips into the chat. I hope you'll put them down below.
I did.
Appreciate that. Because Yanis Varoufakis, what, I forget what his name is. Let me see. Come on. Yanis Varoufakis, a Greek economist. In his presentation, he explains to a great extent the rather radical transformation of the capitalist system that we know now, which emerged to displace the ancient feudal system. And that capitalism is now being replaced by what he refers to as techno-feudalism. Now, whether his description is the one that you should adopt, it's up to you. There's a lot of different people describing this transformation in finance, and they have different ways of characterizing it. But the point that's important is that it is changing radically. And again, so my challenge is to explain something that is so far outside of regular people's regular understanding of the way things works that it's challenging. So let me explain by going to start with the fractional reserve banking system. Now, people know about banks. They know about loans. You know, this is part of daily life. Their monetary, their economic activities, their credit cards, their automatic deposit. You know. People know about that. What they don't think about is that all of the regulations, all of the ways that banks work are created by laws. Laws that are created by legislators, in the case of the United States. Legislators who get their campaign fund money from the oligarchs, the bankers, one class of oligarchs. The people who design the banking system on behalf of the bankers are paid by the bankers to design that system for the benefit of the bankers. That's obvious, actually. I mean, you know, you send a guy to Congress, you're a banker. You fund his campaign, you're going to ask him to create the laws that are the laws you have to operate by. That's where the banks operate. Now, let's take a look at the way those banks operate. Michael Hudson and a variety of other people have acknowledged the fact that the money supply, the money circulating around the world, is generated. There's more money or less money. Recently, the Congress has authorized the creation of $6, $8, $10 trillion of additional money. You know, the CARES Act, remember? $6 trillion. And they pass it over to the banks, and the banks then move it around to various places. The Federal Reserve banking system is a system of privately owned banks. And as privately owned banks, the profits that they generate are theirs. Only in North Dakota, I think, is there a government-owned bank where the profits that the government-owned bank gets for the people of North Dakota. The Federal Reserve System generates profits which come to the owners of the Federal Reserve banks. And here is where the beauty or the beast of the fractional reserve system comes into play. Reserve. Every bank must hold in reserve a certain amount of money relative to their loans. They loan out money, and they have to have in their ready deposit, accessible funds, a fraction of that overall quantity of loans. What fraction? 1/10. Now, they are allowed then, if they have deposits, if they receive from the government per the CARES Act authorization to generate $1 trillion. Let's use $1 billion, okay? They can then loan out 10 billion. Huh? What? How can they loan out more money than they have? Well, because the Congress has passed laws that create the rules by which they operate. And this allows the banks to loan out, to generate loans in a quantity that is 10 times more than the actual money they have. They invent money this way. They invent it out of thin air. Boom. They don't have that money. They have 1/10 of that money, and 9/10, or 10/10 and 1/10, they lend out 10/10. Now, we're all familiar with how loans work. You go to the person who gives you the loan, the bank. They give you a certain amount of money. You have an account, and either the money appears in your account in a bulk, or they give you a credit line, which means that you can draw on that credit line. And that credit line may be the credit line that they have available to you and to the other people taking loans can amount to 10 times what money they have. They go to their computer. You have an account. Boom, you got the money. There's no wealth involved. There's just keystrokes. Now, when I thought about this, I was struck. I thought, that's nifty. Wouldn't you like to be a banker? Wouldn't you like to have the federal government give you $1 billion and you sit back in your big padded chair, and then you lend out $10 billion? You lend $10 billion, make $10 billion worth of loans. Okay. 30-year term, 3%. Okay, so now, year by year, you're making 3% of $10 billion. It's flowing in. But, and here's the part that's really blew my mind. They invent this money, comes out of nowhere, has no wealth, no real wealth established. It's just keystroke numbers, as Elon Musk said, entry in a database. They give it to you to pursue a project. And then you pursue a project which generates real, honest to God productivity, real wealth. And you have to pay them back, not merely the rental fee, which is interest, but also the principal, which they invented out of thin air. You're not paying back money out of thin air. You're paying back money you actually had to earn, real generated wealth. So you're giving them real generated wealth, the principal, as well as the rental fee on money that they invented. You're a banker. You get $1 billion from the federal government. 30 years later, you have $10 billion. By sitting in your big padded chair, doing nothing. Well, okay. You have to be careful where you lend the money in order to get a good return. In order that this money you lend out is actually generating, being dealt with responsibly by people who have a really good project. So, there's a bit of administrative work there as you examine whoever it is you're lending the money to. They recently spoke about Donald Trump and how he borrowed all this money and paid it all back. But that money came out of thin air. So when he paid it back with real money. You see what I'm getting at here? The banking system was designed and submitted to the legislatures to be approved as lawful to allow these people to invent money out of thin air. Michael Hudson has said 90% of the money that is created in the money system of the world is created by banks. This is how they do it. And then the producers pay back with real productivity. So I began thinking about that. That's bad enough. It's bad enough that they lend out the money and they charge you interest on it. They lend out the air vaporware money. They call it vaporware money invented out of thin air. And you pay interest on real money, interest, and real principal to repay the loan out of real productivity. Okay. And I was thinking, okay, well, my system, I won't charge interest. You know, I can compete with the people who had the monopoly on funding of projects, and they only fund projects. They fund the projects that give them the best return on investment, which means the highest interest rate. So some people can't get any money at all because they don't have a project that can deliver to the founders and the investors the rate of return that they want, not to mention the bank. They can't get it because they're left out in the cold. Mexico, Egypt, any number of other countries around the world who won't let their people work as slaves to create real wealth that then flows out of the country into the hands of the bankers. Don't thought about it. Well, now I'm setting up an alternative system that competes with these people. I can lend out the money. Now, my projects are focused on the development of green energy production, the energy supply of the future. So there's that. It's not money I lend any old place. It's money I deploy to generate the energy supply of the future. And when the energy supply of the future is created, it doesn't belong to the founders or the investors. It belongs to all the people who built it. And it belongs, in some sense, talking solar now, this solar energy falls on these countries and is the patrimony of the country itself. Just as Saudi Arabia has oil underneath the sand, that oil actually belongs to the Saudi Arabians, one would think. Just as sunlight falls on a vast expanse of Mexico, the value of that currently unexploited, if there were solar panels deployed across thousands of square kilometers, the energy generated would sell for real revenue. And that real revenue generated by the sunlight that falls on the Mexican land, that revenue, that sunlight is the patrimony of the Mexican people. Half of it should go to the Mexican government for distribution to the rest of the Mexicans, and the other half of it should go to all the people who chose to participate in the project to build it. They will own it at the end. If you look at all the oil wells, coal mines, coal trains, pipelines, oil refineries, and all the power plants that use these things, offshore oil platforms, etc., the trillions of dollars of capital expense used to build that energy infrastructure, it's a lot of money. All of the profit generated by that vast infrastructure goes to the companies that built that. A portion of it goes to the workers who run the refineries and coal trains and coal mines, etc. But the vast majority of it goes to the owners of the companies that create that energy generating infrastructure, energy generating system. My situation, I create the currency, I hire the people, they expand the supply chains, I pay them with this currency that I generated out of thin air, just like the United States generates dollars out of thin air. The technique is applicable. Anybody can do it. And when they build, when they get paid day by day, the idea, they get paid day by day, they spend that money by other people who participate in the project, motivated by the fact that this will help save the planet from global warming. So the money spreads out into the society, and everybody has a wallet on their smartphone, so that when they go to a businessman, they have some green in their account, and they buy a loaf of bread, Diet Coke, cauliflower with their green, and it transfers from their account on their phone to the vegetable market account on their phone, and it just becomes money in everyday use everywhere. Everybody has an account, everybody has some in it. Now, as the energy begins to be generated by this energy infrastructure, where do the profits go? They go to everyone proportionately who has green in their account. Everyone who participates becomes an owner of the system. In this way, this currency is actually what I refer to as an enhanced currency, because it has the characteristic that we normally associate with stocks. Where you have a stock, the profits generated go to the stockholders, right? Proportionate, some dividend thing. Now, whoever has green, whoever participating in the project, either as a worker building the infrastructure, or as just some joker on the street, some normal, ordinary person who approves of the project and wants to use it in his daily, wants to help, wants to participate, wants to, be part of this thing which will remediate global warming. Everybody will have it, and then everybody will share in the revenue.
And
that's the way this works. We're ready to go?
Yes, sir. I was gonna say, and we got to put a pin in it for right now. Do you have a website up yet?
No.
Places we can go. Okay. Well, all right. I was gonna say I'll put that in the description. We have to put a pin in it for right now because I have another guest who's gonna be very frustrated if I don't let them in. But we should probably do a part 2, or when and where is your podcast are you going to start your podcast, and where will it be up for people to look for it in the future?
Well, I added Via Adelante, the YouTube channel, an introductory little promotional thing, which is not specific. You can see it there, and I will be throwing in a variety of content there, and Rumble and Twitter and etc. I've done all the talking. You've done all the listening. I wanted a back and forth. I need to have you and anyone else challenge me to say, well, how does this work? What about that? Do you want to sell? You want to be Julian Assange's cellmate for challenging the American dollar system? Stuff like that. I need to have it be a dialogue.
Yeah, you can. You should start live streaming. You could have people the people will come into the chat and they'll talk to you in real time.
Good. I will do that. Absolutely.
You can say fuck. I don't care.
Okay. One thing I would like to put into your head. I would really like to get on a podcast with Michael Hudson and throw this at him and see what he has to say, because he is really, he really is broken out of the old system and understands the kind of beyond this, there be dragons kind of unknown area we're venturing into. So I'd like to really see what you can do about that.
All right. Well, Mr. Jeff Davis, thank you so much for your time, sir. I was gonna say, and I like the shirt, man. It's a fucking awesome shirt. It's much more colorful, much more alive than this bland black, whatever the hell I have on. So shout out to the shirt. Mr. Jeff Davis, till next time, sir. Thank you so much. And I will send this to you, and we will get the next one on the books. Thank you, sir. God bless.